Hi, Hugh Taylor here, coming to you again from my messy home office. And this is the launch of a new series in our video channel, and it's called Public Relations Basics. And today we're going to do a video on what's called a segment query, which has to do with how to get yourself on TV and radio. And what I'm going to show you, once I've showed this to you, I think you're going to see that television and radio shows come together in a way that perhaps you didn't realize. So, for example, if you're watching the, let's say you're watching a Kelly Clarkson show, and she comes up to her hashtag what I'm liking segment on her show. And this show, she does a segment called, you can see at the bottom, says, Meet the New York City woman bringing plus-size representation to streetwear fashion. And she goes on to introduce this fashion designer who's bringing plus-size fashion onto the streets of New York. Or if you're watching the Ellen show and you've got this Valentine's Day segment. So this is on the air just before Valentine's Day, and it's called How to Get in the Mood for Valentine's Day. So here are two people who have products to sell, or they're selling their personal brand, and they got themselves onto these big TV shows. So the question is, how did they do that? And that's the question we're going to answer in this video. How do people get on TV and radio? There's usually two ways that it happens. One is they call you. They'll call you to be on radio or TV if you're doing something newsworthy, like if you rescue a cat from a tree and you give it back to the kid who owns it and it's a touching story. Well, they'll come and do a segment about that. They're coming to you. Or you call them. You can do this. Pick up the phone or send an email. Contact a radio station or a TV show and say, I want to be on your show. And maybe they'll take you on their show. That's kind of the cool thing about TV and radio. It's more open to inquiry or queries, as we say, than you might realize. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they don't want you on their show. They don't want you on their show if you're boring, or if you're not interesting to their audience, or if you're just promoting yourself. Okay? There's a really important idea that you need to understand about the relationship you're getting into when you query a TV or radio show. Let me tell you why they will want you on your show. And this is what we're going to explain more in the video, how you establish this value to them. If you'll help them get ratings or get better ratings, you'll help them keep their audience engaged, keep them tuned in, not changing the channel. Very important in television and radio. That means you have to be interesting. Make their show fun and interesting. Plus size audience. Perhaps the audience likes plus size clothing. That's interesting to them. Did you also notice that the Kelly Clarkson query and the Ellen query were both really questions? They were like, hey, do you know how you can increase the mood on Valentine's Day? Do you know how you can get plus size clothing? This gets the audience interested. It makes them want to watch more, listen more. Basically, you're helping them make money, okay, by putting yourself on their show. Now, the question is, why do you want to do that? Now, it may be obvious, but let's just go over it. Why would you bother with this? It takes a lot of work to get on TV and radio. It's one of the more time-consuming aspects of doing public relations. And usually there's people specialized in it, representatives. I do it. There's other companies that are very good at it, getting people booked on TV and radio. But what I just want to emphasize here is there's kind of a positive synergy that happens. If you get on the media, it can help you get customers. This usually happens if you're on a major media outlet. People will see your brand. Maybe they'll go to your website. They'll buy your book. They'll want to learn more about you. They'll get to know who you are. So next time they see something from you, they'll be like, oh, that's the person who was on Ellen or whatever. But this also, it's like a positive cycle. If we go around this wheel, you gain credibility for your brand by being in the media. So, oh, you were on Ellen. Oh, you must be a real, valuable brand. And then at the same time, by being on the media, you become more interesting to the media. So then you get more media coverage, get more customers, gain credibility, get on the media more. See, it's like a positive cycle. And that's where you start to see people becoming either real celebrities or, well known in their category that get media exposure. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the crux of this. What does it take to get the attention of a producer? A producer is a person whose job is to make a television or radio show happen. Now, there's usually on a big show, there might be a lot of people called producers, but their job is to do whatever it takes to get, a half hour of radio or TV, produced and on the air in a finished form that's interesting to the audience. It's a very hard job. And one of the reasons it's hard is they have to find interesting topics. So if you want to get the attention of a producer, you have to do something that's of interest to the producer. So there's three things that I suggest people do, and I do this for people all the time, and I'll show you an example in a second. But you can do it for yourself too. Think about, what does their audience like? So if you're talking about like the Kelly Clarkson show, the audience is probably a lot of women. Maybe they're interested in fashion, and maybe they're interested in plus size fashion, right? If your brand is men's health and, men's exercise wear, it may not be as interesting to the Kelly Clarkson show audience, but maybe it's good for another show. If you're offering investment advice, it's probably really not good for the Ellen or Kelly Clarkson show. That's not their audience. You have to align with their audience. One trick that I suggest is imagine the 10-second promo. If you can picture or envision or hear in your head the promo for your segment, the segment you want to suggest, you're on your way to getting on the air. And I'll give you an example. So we were working with a company that was they were selling used baby clothing, gently used baby clothing. So originally their pitch was kind of like, we sell used baby clothing. And then they came back to us and said, we're doing a partnership with a charity. We're going to give away used baby clothing for homeless mothers. Okay, so now it's getting more interesting, right? We're starting to hear a promo. Next up, think about that. Next up, you hear that on the radio and TV all the time. Next up, a store that's giving away baby clothing to homeless mothers. Okay, that's the promo. That's your hook, too. That's interesting. So again, we say there's a famous expression in the PR trade, which is, it's not the book, it's the hook. Understand the relationship between yourself and the media. So let's say you've written a book. Okay, that's awesome. I got to tell you something. The media does not care about your book. They might be interested in you. You want to understand the relationship between yourself and them. They have something valuable to give you. They will give you airtime. That's a valuable commodity. If you ever looked at the prices they charge for ads on that airtime, you'll say, wow, they're going to give me time on their show for free. That's worth a lot of money. They're giving you free airtime because you help them make money by selling ads to other people. Otherwise, they just make you buy an ad. Like if you go to a radio station and say, hey, I wrote a book, they'd be like, congratulations, buy an ad, right? Instead, you have to have a hook, right? And I'll give you an example of of how this can work and differentiate the hook and the book. And so they will always let you plug your product in the segment. For example, if you listen, and one of the things I think is fun, once you understand what's going on, the radio and TV start to look and sound different. When they interview an author on the radio or on TV, they'll always let them plug the book. It's usually at the end of the interview. The main part of the interview is where the author is delivering something of value to the media outlet, the interesting story, the interesting information, the entertaining part of it. Your product is not the story. Your entertainment information value is what matters. So if we look at, I'll give you an example now. So this is a this is a video. It was on a television station, KTLA in Los Angeles, big radio station, television station rather. And this is Dr. Guyana De Silva, child psychiatrist. Okay. And her segment was called Helping Parents Reach Their Depressed Tween. Now, wow, now that's a good hook. You have to imagine, now this still isn't very interesting here, but what I want you to see is that this author, this Dr. Guyana De Silva has written several books on how parents can interact better with their children. She got on television for 7 minutes on a major station by offering a subject that was of interest to the audience to that station. Parents who are concerned about depressed tweens. That's a serious subject. Now she offers it. She offers thoughts on that because she's an expert, and people want to talk to her because she's an expert. That's another important thing. She's not just some person off the street. She's a child psychiatrist. She's credible. She also is called here a guest spurt, and I've found Dr. De Silva through a company that I work with sometimes called tvguestspurt.com, and she's a guest spurt, and they book people on TV. And here's another example of Dr. Guyana. She was on the radio on NPR discussing mental health. Okay, so here's Dr. Guyana De Silva. She's on the radio. Okay, and she's talking about mental health and some of the challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic. So here we have the same guest expert, the guest spurt. She's presenting herself as offering a segment on the radio, talk about mental health and the coronavirus pandemic. Again, an expert who's credible, offering valuable information to the audience. In the case of the company that does the homeless baby clothing, this is the actual segment query. Came in the form of an email. Okay, and actually what I did here was, this is the subject line of the email that went out to TV producers. I said, this is a segment query. I'm not being subtle about it. These are people who are extraordinarily busy. You have about 2 seconds to get their attention. You have to explain why you're getting in touch with them. I said, this is a segment query, and then here's the subject of the query. Clothing for homeless kids this holiday season. Now let me tell you how this segment idea came into existence. So I was just mentioning a minute ago that we were working with this client. They sell used baby clothing. They were partnering with a charity to give away baby clothing to homeless mothers. And this was right around the holiday season. And I thought, this could be an interesting segment because the holiday season made it special. It's tapping into the audience interest or feeling about the holiday season. Let's give something to homeless mothers for Christmas. So this is the email that we wrote. It says, Dear producer, it was personalized to the producer. It says, we'd like to suggest a segment called Clothing Homeless Kids for the Holidays. So hopefully, if the producer has read this far, they're going to say either thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, either I like this idea or I don't. And 99% of the time they don't like the idea. But at least you very quickly establish what you're getting in touch with, explain who we are. We are a My Little Outfit, a children's resale clothing website. Okay, we're working with a partnership with Harvest Home, which is a charity. Then there's a very important section of the query, which says, in this segment, your audience will see. You have to sort of say, this is what your audience is going to get out of this segment. Okay, My Little Outfit will provide the experience of shopping sprees for moms in need as they personally chose clothing for their newborns. Okay, and then we link it to a more serious story. This is part of a big story. There's a serious problem in Los Angeles with homelessness and women who are homeless and pregnant. And then we also include a press release that has more detail to explain more about the story. Now, this project, this query worked, and we got this segment onto KTLA, Channel 5 in Los Angeles, and And the segment was called Local Clothing Company Helping Moms in Need This Holiday Season. So this was a real success story. And we got them on the air. And it shows how if you're offering something, in this case, I wouldn't necessarily say it was entertaining. It was more like a human interest story that was maybe emotionally inspiring to the audience. One thing I want to also talk about is the segment query. When they turn into media segments, they're a very important part of your media coverage portfolio. And so in the case of Dr. Gayani, here in her website, she has her recent appearances. Here's all the time she's been on the media. And this gets back to that synergistic wheel I was talking about. So she's showing that she's credible because she's been on the media. And she's also showing something really important, which is if you're a media producer, you want to see what this person looks like and sounds like before you book them. Sometimes getting the first booking is the hardest thing because they just don't know who you are. If you can say, here's some clips of me on TV, you've just made it easier to get booked. And in this case, she has a profile. This is like a press kit for her, which also offers more information on her background and what she can talk about on the media, like social issues, education, teens, elementary, so forth. And she has some background information on her and so forth. So it's all part of a mix of getting on the air, using that on-air exposure to get more media coverage and so forth, and building a portfolio of coverage. And it all starts with the segment query. So if you want to learn more about segment queries, get in touch. We'd love to work with you. It's commsfactory.net. You can click at the link below, and we can talk.